Shalom, friends. A good kvittel, a good note, and I'll explain what that means. Here we are. In Israel, it's already Hoshana, Rabba, Sunday night, quite late at night. It's accustomed to stay up all night this night learning Torah. I don't know if I'm going to stay up all night, but it's late. And I wanted to share with you something about this unique moment in our calendar. And of course, this year, it's uniquely unique, as it always is, but particularly so. By the time you see this video, it's very possible, please God, Bezrat Hashem, that our living hostages will have been released and returned to their families. I can barely say the words. It's so fraught with emotion, anticipation, with fear that it may not happen, with tension around it, with so many mixed emotions around the whole thing. And we are living through this very historic, very powerful time. And you may be aware of this already, but it's worth saying that this date in the Jewish calendar that we're in right now is precisely one day before the day in the Jewish calendar when this war was started by Hamas's barbaric invasion and the atrocities they committed on October 7th. That was Shemini, Atzeret, and Simchat Torah, which in Israel is one day, which is the day after the day we're in now on our calendar. And as I said, on this day, we hope to get our people back. So there's something unbelievably poignant about this moment, 2 years later, with all the dreadful suffering and the awful cost that this war has inflicted. A war we did not choose, a war we would rather not have fought, a war that was forced on us by that brutal, barbaric invasion and the atrocities committed that day. And the suffering is beyond what can be even understood by any of us. I mean, if any of us just succeed in appreciating just a tiny slice of one person's suffering who's been affected by this war, lives that have been destroyed and families that have been destroyed in so many ways. Of course, I mean, on all sides, but obviously I'm speaking from my experience of being here with the people here, but we're very aware of the terrible cost that's been inflicted in Gaza on the people there as well. So it's a heavy time, and it's also buzzing with this thrilling possibility that something unbelievably miraculous might be about to happen, and we might actually be opening a door to a better chapter. Not because any of us think this is going to go smoothly, that the points of the peace plan are just going to magically unfold easily, and everybody who previously held the position that they wanted to annihilate us is going to magically stop holding that position. But that door is opening to something better, that many of us can see that possibility. It will probably be very messy, but nonetheless, it offers something better than what we've been experiencing for the last 2 years. And very possibly not just for us, very possibly truly for the entire region. Of course, that remains to be seen. But that possibility in itself is worth acknowledging and being thankful for. So what's this got to do with where we are in the calendar? Well, I'm trying to work that out as well, but I'm going to share with you as best I can something I've learned about Hoshana Rabba, this day we're in now, how it relates to Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, the days which come after. What does good kvittel mean? And most of what I'm going to share is based on what I've been learning from the Netivot Shalom, a recent Hasidic Rebbe, and also from one of my teachers, Rabba Yehoshua Gerzi, who shared something very powerful with me today about it. So let's start with the story that we have in our ancient sources about this time of year in general, and see how Hoshana Rabbah fits into that. It's a story we've discussed before together, a story that there are 3 books of judgment opened on Rosh Hashanah, a book of the completely righteous, who are written for life, a book of the completely evil, who are written for death, and a book of those in between, which is 99.99% of us, you and me and everyone else. Basically, we know we're the in-betweeners. And we're told in the Talmud that the judgment of those in-betweeners is suspended, it hangs. It is not decided until Yom Kippur. And then on Yom Kippur, a decision is made. And then we're told in the Zohar, this is an addition to that story in the Talmud the Zohar makes. The Zohar adds that the verdict, the judgment, which is finally made about most of us on Yom Kippur, is sealed and handed down to be delivered, to be enacted, to be implemented on Hoshana Rabba. That is today, the 7th day of Sukkot, and technically the 7th and final day of Sukkot. That may be surprising for you to hear because we celebrate Sukkot, we feel like, for 8 or in the diaspora 9 days, but technically that last 1 or 2 days, again in the diaspora 2 days of Shemini, Atzeret and Simchat Torah, technically that is not part of Sukkot. Being very technical, being very pedantic, but just to make the point, because technically Sukkot is a week long. It's a 7-day festival, and that means right now, Sunday night, Monday, Hoshana Rabba, where I am, and soon by you, if you're viewing this before then, that is the 7th and final day of Sukkot. And then, so what is Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah? We'll get to that. But for now, if Hoshana Rabba is the sealing of the judgment that was going to originally be made on Rosh Hashanah and then was finally made on Yom Kippur, then it's actually in a very deep way a point of culmination of all the spiritual work we've been doing for many, many weeks leading up to this point. And it carries that severity, that seriousness. A seal within a seal, it's called. A double sealing. Now, that's what a good kvittel means, by the way. Good kvittel means a good note or a good verdict. The note of the verdict should be good for us. We say on Hoshana Rabbah, we say to each other, I hope you get a good sealing, a good verdict. But the Hasidic approach to all of this is very empowering because, the story of judgment, especially judgment from above, especially the idea of a heavenly court, can seem to a lot of us like actually quite disempowering. So the Hasidim reframe it for us in a very classic Hasidic fashion and in alignment with a classic Hasidic principle that whatever we do to and for ourselves and to others down here as well, but this is really beginning with ourselves, that's what is done to us. In very similar fashion, you may remember something I shared about Rosh Hashanah, which was the Baal Shem Tov shared that the writing on the books on Rosh Hashanah, the book of life, the book of death, the book of the in-betweeners, the writing in the books on Rosh Hashanah, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic path, he shared that writing in the books was actually our own thoughts. So very similarly, the seal. How is a seal something that we create down here? Well, we actually have a word in English which can help us understand this. Another word for seal is a resolution. And resolution is very closely related to a resolve. Our resolve, in fact, the word resolve can even be also used to mean a resolution. Our resolve, our finally deciding that we want to change some maybe very, very tiny aspect of our lives. As Rav Gerzi likes to say, a change anywhere is a change everywhere. It's a very important principle. We might only be able at this moment to make a tiny change in some area of our lives. It might be a tiny habit that we tweak, something very small that we take away or add to our lives in a very subtle way. No one else may notice, but that tiny change is a change everywhere. It affects everything else. So whatever that change is that we resolve to do, that we are determined to do, that resolution and determination is very important because life is going to present all kinds of challenges and obstacles, as of course it always does, as the nature of life is. So we need that resolve and that determination. That's a seal. That's a seal that we give ourselves. The seal of the spiritual work I've been doing for weeks and weeks and weeks in this season. It comes to the culmination point of these final few days, and I say to myself, what do I want to take away? What do I resolve is going to be different in my life? Again, it might be something very tiny, but that's fine, because that is a change everywhere. It's going to change my whole life and everything I do if I can stick to it. So I need to be resolved. That's a seal. And Nativot Shalom brings very beautifully. He says that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're primarily working on our inner lives. Rosh Hashanah, we talk a lot about our thoughts, as I just did from the Baal Shem Tov, that teaching there as an example. On Yom Kippur, we talk a lot about our soul. we also talk a lot about our emotions. If we go through the experience of Yom Kippur, we invest so much emotionality into our prayers, into the experience of the day. But he says something very interesting. He says, by the time we get to Hoshana Rabba, we've done something that we didn't do until Yom Kippur, and including Yom Kippur. We didn't work on our bodies yet. But now, Hoshana Rabbah, the seventh and final day of Sukkot, we've worked on our bodies. How so? Well, I'm right now in my sukkah, one of the only mitzvot, as we've discussed, that we enter into with our whole bodies. We've also been waving the 4 species, natural, embodied mitzvah, things that grow from the earth, that reflect the organic world around us that we want to be in harmony in. And our rabbis specifically say each of the 4 species, the lulav and the etrog and the other 2, that they actually relate to the parts of our body, that they actually represent the different parts of us physically. They also relate to different qualities in us and different kinds of people as well. But we are in the midst of being surrounded by this very physical mitzvah that I'm in right now, and also in grabbing hold of with our hands these very physical items which represent, as I say, the different parts of our own physical being. And what do we do with them? We wave them in all the directions of physical space. So Sukkot really is the pinnacle, the epitome of a festival which is about embracing, purifying, and refining the physical. I can't really imagine a festival which embraces the physical more and which gives us a chance to work on it more. So we've gone through teshuvah and refining and working on our thoughts, our feelings, and now we get to these 7 days of Sukkot, where we've been doing these very, very active embodied things. And by the way, even just to participate in any way in any of the mitzvot of Sukkot is to do this. If you visited someone's sukkah, or if you help somebody make their sukkah, these are all very physical things. So after we've been through that process, and Tivot Shalom says, we're ready for a different kind of teshuvah and a different kind of resolve, a different kind of sealing. The sealing we make on Hoshana Rabbah, he says, is a sealing we can make with our embodied self. We can say, I resolve not only to try and think differently and to feel differently, which he acknowledges we don't always have full control of, and which sometimes is hidden from us. We're not always aware of our thoughts and our feelings, but our actions, that we actually can see. It's much, much more clear to us. If we do something we don't want to do, of course we still all do that sometimes, but if we do, it's much more evident, and we have much more obvious control over our actions. Again, not 100%. No one is, completely perfect and always going to make all the right choices from their higher self, but we're much more likely to be able to control our actions and to choose what we want to do, to act as we want to act, if we are resolved to do so. That's the ceiling we can give ourselves on this Hoshana Rabbah. Then we go on to explain briefly into Shemini Atzeret / Simchat Torah, which again, diaspora is 2 days, here is 1 day combined. What do we do on that day? Well, then we take all the work we've been doing, thoughts, emotions, our bodies, and we turn it outwards to the whole world. And actually, this begins even really on Hoshana Rabbah in the liturgy, but it's especially obvious on Shemini Atzeret. We pray for rain, which is life, for the whole world. We pray that life may continue. We pray that the blessing that we're drawing down, and the resolve, the sealing that we're trying to make for ourselves to make a better contribution, is affecting all the different parts of ourselves and the whole world. So we are really opening ourselves to be vessels of blessing. We're asking for ourselves to be channels for blessing for the whole world, which, by the way, is one of the meanings in our mystical tradition for a tzaddik, for a righteous person, somebody who is a tzinur, a channel for blessing to come to the world. So we are trying through this process of teshuvah, of returning to our higher selves, and going through all these different stages of the festival season to get to a point where we can pray for the entire world and actually be sincere vessels and channels for blessing to come to the entire world. And that's what we do, especially on Shemini Atzeret. Now there's another layer of meaning to Shemini Atzeret it would be remiss not to mention, which is this beautiful story that's told, where God turns to us and says, you've been busy praying during Sukkot specifically for all the nations of the world, because on Sukkot there are sacrifices offered in the temple for all the nations of the world. But on Shemini Atzeret, God turns to us in the Midrash and says, I would like one day where you're just with me for intimacy's sake, just for the sake of closeness and being together. And the Netivat Shalom talks about how this is a seal of love, and how if Hoshana Rabba, the seventh day of Sukkot, is a sealing of judgment, a sealing of din, sealing the judgment that was made in those books and sealing our judgment of ourselves, of our behavior, of how we want to go forward in the world, then after the seal of judgment becomes a seal of love. I love this idea because the whole season of Teshuvah begins with love, with the month of Elul, which is Ani Dodi v'Dodi li, which is I am for my beloved and my beloved is for me, which is a whole season of intimacy with the divine and love. And then we have the severity, the transparency, the accountability, the judgment of Rosh Hashanah, and to a different quality, but still in a similar vein, Yom Kippur, which are challenging. And now we're being told that the season ends also with love, with intimacy, with a compassion, which is very touching. And that's how we finally finish the season. Of course, if Simchat Torah is a separate day, if you're in the diaspora, then that element of it is also drawn out, which means we especially focus on ending the Torah and beginning it again. And by the way, that's also about love. The last letter of the Torah is Lamed. The first letter of the Torah is Bet. If you put them together, you get Lev, which is the word for heart. So we end the Torah and we begin the Torah and we make the word heart in doing so. And Reb Nosson of Breslov has a beautiful teaching about how the secret meaning to ending the Torah and beginning it again right away is all about divine compassion in creating the world. The beginning of the Torah, Bereshit, Genesis, is about the universe being created in love, for love, by love, to love. So we are on this journey, and at this moment of anticipation so deep, I find it very hard to put into words. Anticipation caught up with so much fear and so many other mixed feelings, and so much hope, so much fragile hope for a better future, and so much heartbreak for what has been, and so much judgment over what has been. Let us resolve as best we can on our own thoughts and feelings, on our own bodies, on the different parts of our body that we work with, that we interact with the world with, that we act with, and let us do the best we can to resolve, to become vessels for blessing. And as our Hasidic masters say, as we resolve for ourselves, may it be resolved, may it be sealed for us, for all of us, for you, for your loved ones, for our communities, for our whole people, and for our whole world. We really are at a turning point when it is possible. Bezrat Hashem, please God, we might be moving forward into a better year than we've had recently for a while. It might be a wonderful new beginning if we can let ourselves enter into it, in that spirit, and give ourselves that gift, or that possibility. Bereshit, new universe that's made, really could be one of tremendous blessing if we can be channels for blessing into it. So may it be so. And a good kvetul and a Chag Sameach, joyous festival when it comes.